Hello, my friend. It is your brother Hampton from Hybrid Calisthenics. Welcome back to another episode of Coffee with Hampton, where I sit down and share some thoughts with you over a cup of coffee. Now, it has been a while, so if you haven't seen one of these before, it's very much a podcast style of content where you open a new browser tab or set down your phone and do something else and listen rather than watch if you're used to our shorts. First of all, I do need to take a sip of tea. It is tea today, otherwise people tend not to believe that there's anything in the cup and they think it's a conspiracy. So if you want to cancel me, you can start with that. But I want to talk today about the feeling that many of us get when we realize our life has fallen off track a little bit, which happens to a lot of people, if not everyone. Some very dedicated, motivated, disciplined individuals that I know run into this, where every once in a while, you either wake up gradually or all of a sudden, or someone says something to you, usually not out of malice, but just a remark that you notice, and you realize, my life has fallen off track a little bit. Sometimes in a big way, to where like, oh my gosh, I married the wrong person, or oh my gosh, I went to school for the past 7 years for the wrong thing. Hopefully you're not going through anything like that, and sometimes you do, but hopefully it's smaller, more minor things. Like, oh yeah, that exercise program I committed to 2 months ago, I haven't been doing it for a while. It was working really well for me, but I haven't been doing that. That new eating plan I was doing, I really liked it, but it just, I started eating out and started traveling more, and also maybe you've committed to spending more time with your family and friends. So we all different variations of these things, and we all run into them. And I just want to talk today about the foundation that I found really works for getting back on track. Because if it's been going a few weeks, a few months, it can feel kind of overwhelming, right? I get messages and emails like this, and this is partially what inspired it. And it's partially inspired by me, because every once in a while I realize, oh, I haven't been doing the things that I want. But this is pretty common. I see this in messages and DMs and comments a lot. It's not always phrased this way, but people feel like their life has fallen off track from where they intended. And for me, it's usually exercise or content related, because I do fitness content, and fitness in many ways is a huge part of my life, but so is making content, but so is spending time with friends and family. So if that balance ever falls off whack, I'm like, man, I just haven't been as productive in a way I want, and I haven't been exercising the way I want. And I know some people feel like productivity is almost a negative thing. And I understand that we shouldn't only be slaves to our work and the things that we think we should do. But I'm talking very much in a healthy, enjoyable way, because I want to work. I want to provide things for you all, and I want to exercise, and I want to spend time with my family. So I recognize there is a foundation to getting everything back on track. And that usually, if I'm summarizing, I tell people, is to start with what you know you should do. And that perhaps is only giving half the story, because the important thing for me is first to dial in 3 things, with a possible 4th. So my sleep, my diet, or the things I eat, and my exercise and or lifestyle. If you want to separate exercise from lifestyle, that's 1 to 3 becomes 4. But this is very important for me to do, because first, it can be hard to know exactly what we need to do, right? Sometimes I wake up, or I get a wake-up call, and I realize, man, I'm just not working as hard as I should be. I've been off track a little bit. The first thing I do is try to fix my sleep cycle a little bit. I understand this is hard. I'll get into that in a little bit. And afterwards, then I hit exercise. It's because these things are usually the things that I can have a little bit more control over. Like I can try to sleep earlier. I may not succeed, but I also know I can commit to maybe 10 minutes of exercise a day. If I've completely fallen off track, it's really more, for me, it's more like tuning and adjusting my exercise program. And I also take a look at what I eat. So some people choose to have supplements, or maybe like a multivitamin that you take, whatever you think can give you the optimum edge of clarity. And the reason I mention all these things, diet, sleep, lifestyle, is because before I even decide what I need to change, because I recognize that my life is off track a little bit, before I even decide what I need to do next to get back on track, I need to get to a certain state of clarity. So if we're flying low to the ground, to use a metaphor, if we're flying low to the ground and it's foggy or it's cloudy, I need to get up to 30,000 feet. I need to get up to where I can have the altitude to see what needs to be changed. And generally, this happens after a good night, after I'm well rested, well nourished, and living a good life. A good life in the sense that I am exercising and I don't really drink, or I don't have any like party drugs or something in my system. But if that's something you do, that might be something you may want to consider slowing down in order to get this level of clarity. But it's just like a good day. I think hopefully most of us have had those at some point of our life, to where we wake up Sunday afternoon or something, we're like, and we feel rested and relaxed and unstressed. And that feels almost like we're pampering ourselves. But I found that this is generally when I can make the best decisions. And this makes sense, right? Because if we are falling off track, we're usually some combination of exhausted, malnourished, stressed, and things related to that. And I realized that when we are these things, when we're stressed, tired, exhausted, hungry again, it is hard to make good decisions. So it's really handy for me to get to a place to where I don't feel like I'm being chased by a bear, metaphorical or hopefully literal as well. And when I can get to that state where I feel a little bit unstressed and I feel a little bit pampered, if you want to call it that, or really just more like a good place, then I can start to make some better decisions. There's a saying I tell myself and some friends, but I don't really say online. This might be the first time I've said it online. And it's because it gets misconstrued. And that is, you are the CEO of your own life. Now, some of you may have heard that and just rolled your eyes. And that's why I don't say it online. It's because it gets misconstrued for this type of like alpha grind set, work hard, no one can work harder than you kind of mentality, which I guess you could apply it in that way. But what I really mean isn't that you have the ultimate control over everything, which is, in my opinion, not true. You have some control over yourself if you are blessed. But it is more so that you can come in as if you were hired as a CEO, because a CEO isn't always the top. There can be an owner and a CEO, but if you're hired to manage someone's business, and that business is your own life, that's what promotes myself, and I encourage others to think of it almost like a third-party perspective. Like if you ever go into a friend's restaurant or a friend's business that they own, and in your mind, even if you don't tell them, you're like, man, if I were them, I'd really just move the sign to the front, or I'd really adjust, these are small businesses, or I really, I'd offer this on the menu, or really, you should just clean up the restrooms, things like that, right? We have the luxury of having perspective that someone in the day-to-day might not feel or see as clear as we do. And I think this is very true in our lives as well. So when I say you are the CEO of your own life, what I mean is that you have power over everything, which is always true, but that you can come in with a perspective like, if I were managing my life, what would I change? And sometimes it's some pretty serious stuff. Sometimes it's lighthearted, like, man, I've been eating too many cookies. Yeah, I know, moderation is key, but I've really been eating too many cookies, something like that. And sometimes it's more serious, like maybe the next right step forward for me is actually a step backwards out of my toxic relationship or toxic workplace. And these are pretty heavy, life-changing things, so it's something that you'll have to think about yourself. But my point is to come in with an outside perspective and try to think, if you were a third party, what would you change? Like, you have a pretty good life going. You have, you might not make the most money, but you have good family and friends. Why not lean into that? Why not apply at this job that you've been thinking about for a while? It's hard to say because we all have different situations, but these are some ideas. And lastly, I want to touch upon the point, I just sip in between takes a little bit. I want to touch upon the point that some people may be thinking, or hopefully they haven't left yet, but it's that it's easy to say, fix your diet. It's easy to say, fix your sleep, fix what you eat, fix your exercise. But it's not always that easy, right? In fact, it might seem like it's a vicious cycle downwards because you don't get enough sleep. Then you don't have enough energy to exercise. And when we're exhausted and stressed, we tend to seek out junk foods more, or foods we know we shouldn't eat, or maybe some comfort foods, or some combination thereof. And it's very easy to eat very poorly. This is why we often put on weight or lose weight if that's something you struggle with, and just fall off the rails in that sense. But the good news is the reverse cycle also exists. So if you sleep a little better, so you start with what you know you should do and you think you can do, small steps So if you know you can try to go to bed, it may not be the answer, but try to go to bed every day 30 minutes earlier. Maybe stop looking on your phone or stop watching TV a little bit earlier and see what you can glean from that. Or something that you may feel like you have more control over is having some exercise. So that's something that people ask me about a lot of times, is they don't have the motivation to exercise even though they know they should. And this is often brushed off a little bit in the fitness community, because the answer that trainers, a lot of my friends and people I respect say this, that we can't rely just on motivation, we have to have discipline. Which I agree with, but some people, they struggle a little bit with getting started, and that's something that I think I can relate to and try to provide some more solutions for, other than it's only discipline. But what you might be able to commit to is something small. So perhaps a walk daily, or maybe 5 minutes of exercise. Maybe you can do calisthenics, the hybrid fitness routine. I'm kind of biased because we wrote it. We're actually in the process of redoing it. And likewise with diet, or the things we eat. By the way, when I say diet, I know some people don't like the term because it has implications of restricted eating, but I use it to mean the things we regularly eat and the things we regularly drink, just take in our bodies, in the sense that everyone has a diet. You can think of them as eating and drinking patterns. But while that's a huge topic in and of itself, there are usually some things that we know we can do. Like many of us think that we need to drink some more water. Not all of us do, but that is something that many of us can get. So something you can start with is a little bit more hydration, perhaps. Or even if it's not just pure water, maybe you can look at some powders or some supplements for some electrolytes, right? Or if you're comfortable with it, instead of having cake, you could also try having some fruit instead. Once again, these are all fields and discussions in and of themselves. For example, some people really like fruit and others really don't. They really don't even want to hear about it. But all of this is just to say that the reverse cycle also works. When you get a little bit more sleep, you might find it a little bit more easy to exercise. And if you exercise regularly, you might find it a little bit easier to sleep and eat well. So while I know it can be scary when we fall off track a little bit, if we're tired and stressed and hungry and we're injured or mentally injured, and it can feel like a lot of things are collapsing in on us at the same time, and it can be very scary. What I want to offer is that the reverse is also true. While we've dug ourselves in a pretty deep hole sometimes, all we can really do is the next right step. And we can start with the things that we know we need to do, and the things we know or suspect we can do, taking a single right step. That first step is often the hardest one. Something I tell people when they say they don't feel like exercising every day is just to commit to the first minute, the first set, the first 5 minutes, whatever works, and tell yourself that you're going to do this set. You're going to really try. You're going to start thinking about it, and you're going to get in the zone for it. And if after 5 minutes or a single set or whatever you committed to, you still feel like quitting, then you can tell yourself, then today I will cut it short and I'll quit for today and come back later. And what I found for a lot of people, myself included, is after they get in that zone and they've taken that first step and started thinking about it and started doing, it becomes a lot easier. And a lot of people start and they say they'll quit after 5 minutes, but they do the full hour or half hour or however long. So when we feel like our life has fallen off track and there's a lot of things working against us and there's a ton of downward momentum, it can be very scary. But the good news is we can start and reverse that momentum up by doing a few key things that we often know we should do. A few key things that we think we can do. One of the best things about life is no matter how lost we are, how lost we feel, all we usually need to find is the next right step. And no matter how many times we failed, we can almost always try again. It is getting dark, so thank you so much for listening. Have a beautiful day.